welcome to the deep dive. Today, I want you to think about corn for a second. Not just, the corn on the cob, but what's underneath, the roots.
The hidden half.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it turns out those roots have this really surprising history. It's all tangled up with us, with human history, and climate change, too.
It's a fascinating story of adaptation, really. I mean, these roots have been changing for thousands of years. They've responded to natural shifts in the environment, sure, but also, crucially, to how we started farming.
Right. So that's our deep dive today. We're going to unpack that story. We're drawing on some really cool research here, mainly from Penn State scientists Jonathan Lynch and Ivan Lopez-Valdivia. It was published in New Phytologist.
Yeah, it's groundbreaking work.
And our goal really is to pull out the key insights, give you those aha moments about how corn roots adapted, and, importantly, why that ancient history might actually help us build better crops for the future. Quick insights, no overload.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's go right back to the beginning, to the wild ancestor. Corn didn't just pop up right. It came from teosinte, this wild grass in central Mexico, maybe 9,000 years ago.
That's the timeline, yeah, about 9,000 years ago. And early people were, frankly, amazing plant breeders. They took teosinte's tiny, hard kernels and somehow selectively bred them into the big ears of corn we know.
Incredible. But the roots, that part of the story has always been a bit murky, hasn't it?
It really has.
Yeah.
Much less obvious than the changes above ground. And that's what drove this research. People started asking, okay, how did the roots change? And what part did they play in domestication?
It's not just academic curiosity either, is it?
Not at all. Understanding that evolution is super relevant now. With the climate warming up, crops are under more stress. Lessons from the past could be key.
So, okay, 9,000 years ago, how on earth do scientists figure out what roots were doing back then? That sounds difficult.
It is. It's a huge challenge. And that's why their approach was so clever. It was multidisciplinary, meaning they didn't rely on just one thing. They looked at DNA from actual ancient corn samples.
Wow, ancient DNA.
Yeah. And also paleobotanical evidence. Think fossil bits, pollen grains, even chemical traces left in old soil layers.
Okay, piecing together clues.
Exactly. But the really cutting-edge part, they used a computer simulation. It's called the OpenSimRoot model.
OpenSimRoot, developed at Penn State.
That's the one. Developed right there in the College of Agricultural Sciences. It let them model how roots might have grown and evolved under different historical conditions.
So like a virtual time machine for roots.
Kind of, yeah. It's an in silico approach done on the computer. It lets you test scenarios like ancient climates or soil types that you just can't physically recreate today.
That is remarkable, a digital window, like you said. So what did this digital digging uncover? What were the big root changes?
They zeroed in on three main transformations as corn evolved away from teosinte.
Okay, number one.
First, reduced nodal root number, NRN for short. These are the roots that come out from the stem near the surface. Corn developed fewer of those.
Fewer shallow roots. Got it. Number two.
Second, the development of something called multiseriate cortical sclerenchyma, MCS.
Whoa, that's a mouthful.
It is. It's basically a layer of thick-walled cells within the root. Think of it like a reinforcement. It helps the roots penetrate deeper, harder soils.
Okay, so tougher roots for digging deep. And you said Penn State found this before.
Yeah, that was a prior discovery from Lynch's lab, identifying that trait and its function.
Right. And the third big change.
Third was an increased seminal root number, or SRN. These are the very first roots that pop out from the seed when it germinates. Super important for getting the seedling established. Corn developed more of these.
More starter roots.
Okay, so
Fewer shallow nodal roots, tougher penetrating roots, and more initial seminal roots. What drove these changes? What came first?
well, the earliest driver seems to have been environmental. We're talking 12,000 to 8,000 years ago. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were rising then.
Okay. And how did that affect roots?
Higher CO2 generally favored plants that could invest more in deeper root systems. So this pressure likely supported that reduction in the shallow nodal roots, the NRN, and the beginnings of that MCS, the tough root trait.
So the plant itself was already shifting its strategy, trying to go deeper for resources because of the changing air.
Exactly. It was adapting its resource foraging strategy way back then.
Okay, then humans jump in more directly. You mentioned irrigation starting around 6,000 years ago. That sounds like a game changer.
Oh, absolutely. A massive shift. Irrigation fundamentally changed the soil environment, especially for nitrogen.
How so?
Well, watering essentially washed the readily available nitrogen, like nitrate, down from the topsoil into deeper layers, leaching, basically.
Right, so the easy-to-reach nutrients were suddenly not so easy to reach.
Yeah, precisely. And this just reinforced the trend. It made having fewer shallow nodal roots even more beneficial, and it made that MCS trait, the one for penetrating deep, even more valuable. The roots had to go deeper to get the nitrogen.
Wow. So our farming methods were directly rewarding deeper, tougher roots.
It's a classic example of human practices driving plant evolution. And interestingly, something else happened around that same time, 6,000 years ago.
What's that?
Kernel weight increased to basically modern levels.
So the seed itself got bigger, packed more energy?
Exactly. It meant the seedling had enough stored resources to power the growth of those deeper root systems later on. It all fits together.
Okay, so the plant is adapting to irrigation, seeds get bigger.
Right.
What happens next? You mentioned population growth and maybe things getting tougher for the plants.
Right. Fast forward to around 3,500 years ago, you see more people, farming gets more intense, and soils start to degrade in some areas. More stress on the system.
In not ideal conditions for a young plant.
Definitely not. And this seems to be when that third trait really came into its own. The increased number of seminal roots, the SRN.
The starter roots. Why then?
Because in those tougher, perhaps less fertile or degraded soils, getting a good, strong start became absolutely critical. Having more of those initial roots gave the seedling a better shot at establishing itself quickly, grabbing whatever water and nutrients were nearby right away.
So it needed a faster, stronger launch just to survive those early days.
You got it. A robust early root system became a huge advantage.
And is there genetic evidence for this timing? Can they actually see that change in the ancient DNA?
They can, yes. That's another really cool part. When they compared the DNA across different time periods, they saw a clear shift. Specific versions or alleles of genes known to be involved in seminal root number genes like ZM0000000D02157 and BIGE1 became much more common between about 5,500 and 3,500 years ago.
So the genetics confirmed the timing suggested by the environmental pressures and the modeling.
Precisely. It lines up very nicely.
Okay, so we've traced this whole journey, these three big root changes driven by CO2, then irrigation, then intensification and soil changes. What did the computer simulation say was the single biggest factor influencing all this over the long haul?
Yeah, when they ran all the numbers, simulated all those millennia, the standout factor was nitrogen. Nitrogen availability, specifically its distribution in the soil, was the most significant environmental lever shaping how useful these different root traits were and how maize roots adapted in that specific region, the Tehuacán Valley, throughout the entire Holocene epoch.
It really all came down to chasing the nitrogen.
In many ways, yes. That was the core resource the roots were optimizing for, driven deeper and deeper over time.
So if you put it all together, there's a kind of logical order these traits appeared in.
There seems to be, yeah. The research suggests the sequence. First, the reduced nodal roots, NRN, and the tough MCS trait started appearing maybe 12,000 to 8,000 years ago, initially driven by CO2.
Okay.
Then, kernel weight beefed up by around 6,000 years ago, providing the fuel reserves.
Right.
And finally, the increased seminal roots, SRN, likely became more prominent later, around 3,500 years ago, as a response to intensification and soil stress.
It's like a step-by-step toolkit the plant developed.
Exactly. A gradual adaptation reflecting that constant dance between the plant's needs and the changing environment, especially where the nitrogen was.
And throughout this, maize corn was actually doing better than its ancestor, teosinte.
Yes. The simulation showed that from about 8,000 years ago onwards, maize consistently produced more shoot biomass, more growth above ground than teosinte would have in the same conditions.
Why?
Largely because it was successfully adapting its root system depth to track that shifting, deepening nitrogen supply over time. It was winning the resource race.
It's a real success story of adaptation then, and a partnership with humans, even if unintended consequences were involved.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to the present, right? What does all this ancient history mean for us now?
That's the key question. Jonathan Lynch, one of the lead researchers, suggests this gives us what? Guidance.
Yeah, crucial guidance. He argues that understanding this long-term evolutionary trajectory, how roots responded to past changes in CO2, water, nitrogen, soil, can inform how we breed corn today. We're facing rising CO2 again, changing rainfall patterns, soil issues. Maybe the answers, or at least some strong clues, are in this historical blueprint.
So we could look back to see how the plant solved similar problems before and maybe reactivate some of those ancient
Well,
strategies.
enhance them, yeah. Use that knowledge to select for root traits that will make corn more resilient to future conditions. The past informs the future.
And it feels like none of this deep insight would be possible without those computer simulations, the
Yeah.
OpenSim root model. How critical was that?
Oh, indispensable. You simply can't run a 9,000-year field experiment.
Right.
These functional structural models, even though they have to simplify reality to some extent, are incredibly powerful. They let you explore those complex interactions between a plant's form and function, its phenotype, and environments that literally don't exist anymore. You can test what-if questions about the deep past.
Testing hypothetical plants in lost worlds.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool.
It really is. It opens up whole new ways to understand evolution.
So stepping back, it's an incredible hidden journey, isn't it? Corn's roots, quietly adapting decade after decade, millennium after millennium.
It really puts it in perspective. Nature and human ingenuity working together, sometimes accidentally, shaping this vital crop.
Yeah, it makes you realize how much complex history is packed into the food we eat. These hidden structures, the roots, played such a massive part.
It's a potent reminder, I think. Every bite is a product of this long, ongoing evolutionary story, and often a story we directly influenced.
So as we look ahead to, all the environmental challenges coming our way, maybe the smartest solutions aren't just about inventing brand new things.
Maybe not entirely. Perhaps it's also about understanding and maybe even tapping into that deep adaptive wisdom that's already encoded in the plants themselves, learned over millennia.
What other lessons, I wonder, are still buried back there in the past, just waiting for us to uncover them?
That's the exciting question, isn't it? There's likely so much more to learn.